Welcome to the ECE Classroom Podcast with your host, Susie Beghin. Inspiring early childhood educators every day. Hello, welcome to the ECE Classroom. I'm Susie Beghin, and I'll be your host of the show. This is our very first episode, and I'm so excited to talk about early childhood education topics, which are very near and dear to my heart. So I wanted to start off with our first episode focusing on the most important thing about early childhood education, and that is the educators. I wanted to give a special shout out to all the early childhood educators out there. We know how hard you work, and we know how important your work is. So I wanted to give you a great big shout out and dedicate this episode to you. So today we're going to talk about educator empowerment or educator engagement. These days, the field of early childhood education is growing, expanding, and changing constantly. And this creates a very stressful environment for educators to work in when every day there's new regulations, new ways of doing business, that it can be difficult for educators to cope. We've lost a lot of educators in the last couple of years because of COVID, and we want to gain more educators back into the system. So today we're going to talk about educator empowerment and engagement. I really want to help educators to feel empowered to be the best that they can be for the children, for the parents, for the families, and even for themselves. I want them to reconnect with why they're doing what they're doing. Today, we have a very special guest joining us to talk about educator empowerment. So let's meet our special guest. Hello, and welcome to the ECE Classroom, our very first episode. And I am so honored to welcome a special guest. Her name is Anisha Angella. She is an early childhood education coach and expert who's been in the industry for over 14 years. She has a degree in early childhood studies, and she's held many roles over the years. She's been in charge of childcare programs, taught at the college level, been a senior manager for a multi-location childcare, and she's also now the CEO of her own business called the Early Childhood Coach, which is a powerhouse for all things childcare consulting, coaching, and training. And I'd like to welcome Anisha. Welcome to our show and welcome to our very first episode.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Susie. Honestly, the fact that this is your first episode, I am so honored to be on your first one. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So today, the topic of our conversation is educator engagement. So I thought, who better to have than somebody who works with educators on a daily basis, coaches them, consults. I know you run your own early childhood educator summit as well. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about engagement in terms of, what have you seen in the field in your work? And in particular, what are you seeing that are some struggles going on for early childhood educators today?
A lot is happening. A lot is happening in early education. I think this is just one of those fields that is always changing. Things are always coming our way. I know, I try my best not to use the C word too much, and that word is COVID. And what I'm really finding are some struggles of educators usually right now in the classroom and even outside of the classroom too, is they're experiencing burnout on a different level. It's not just your regular, 9 to 5 burnout, a little vacation will take care of it. We're seeing some deep-rooted burnout that is actually being stemmed from, going through COVID and what that looks like. And really the question of educators now really digging deeper into what their why is. What brought them to this field? They're having those questions now because a lot of us are deciding and saying, is this for me anymore? A lot of them are having those critical questions. And even though deep down in their heart, they're feeling like, yes, I'm supposed to be here, those questions are coming into place. And a lot of the times it's because they're really burnt out. So now leaders are stepping into the fold of being burnt out and having to help out educators while they navigate through that as well. So that's something that I really see. And when an educator is, feeling burnt out and feeling just at their end, they're lacking the creativity. And we know that creativity comes from within. When we see an activity online, on Pinterest, wherever we see it, we're ready to do it. It's usually because we feel really good about it. But, you know, a lot of the educators I've been working with, I've been called in to do a lot of wellness conversations around burnout, is all centered around that aspect. And everything, you know, comes from the educator to begin with. So if they're feeling burnt out, they're not tapping into their creativity, maybe they're not feeling as fulfilled, you know, in their role anymore. So a lot of them are going through that process and actually having to figure out, how can I recover from this? So that's a big thing that I'm seeing happening with educators. And I am very happy that we're having conversations. I know, Susie, you could probably relate. In early education, you know, some time ago, we didn't really talk about burnout. We didn't really talk about, you know, educator empowerment. We just kind of show up and, you know, do what we have to do. But now we're having these mental health conversations, which is really important, because early educators are human first, right? So I'll say that is probably one of the biggest things that I'm seeing right now in the classrooms, is just teachers trying to navigate how to reconnect with themselves and recover. And then in addition to that, what I'll add as well is, I think, just kind of bringing their program back to a new norm. So with COVID, it kind of changed things. There was a certain time in our lives where we were inviting parents into our classrooms to come take a look. There was a period where we couldn't allow them to come into the classrooms, right? Because of the restrictions that were happening. Mm-hmm. So now they're trying to navigate, you know, bouncing back, but then also kind of taking a look at this new norm. So all of that mixed together is really an outlook of what some of the educators are truly, truly dealing with.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. You know, as a daycare owner, I have 3 centers, and, you know, I walk into the classrooms because I have a QA role now where I go into the classrooms and, you know, make sure that quality is there in each and every classroom. And I do see that, you know, we did have to go through a big change with COVID, and it kind of turned our world upside down, put a lot of stress on the educator, you know, as a frontline worker way back then. It feels like a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
No,
And,
I know.
you know, and I feel like, yeah, you're right. It's, you know, getting back to that normal is still a change, right? Like going through the change of changing everything and then changing everything back. I feel like in this industry, the only constant is change. Like, I know it's a cliche, but it's true. Like, there's always change happening, change in regulation, change in, you know, how we do our jobs. So yeah, I could understand that burnout would be very real for this industry. And we did lose a lot of, you know, very competent educators because of COVID, and, you know, them reevaluating whether or not they thought this was the industry for them. And I hope we can, you know, I hope we can bounce back from that, because we need great educators in the field, and we need to understand, what do we do about burnout? Like, what are some strategies that we can do to get back to normal, you know?
Yeah, yes. And also just embracing possibly a new norm, right? Embracing what a new norm might look like for us. And, you know, you mentioned a very important aspect, and change is constant. And I think us as educators, sometimes we don't really feel comfortable with change. Change can be icky sometimes. So I think already with that mindset, we're thinking, you know, change is always happening. How do you always adapt to this change? I mean, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially as educators too, to really do our best for the children and do our best for the families. And we're really hard on ourselves as well. So I think the mix of all of those entities is what we're seeing right now in the classroom. I've actually just, you know, finished up a workshop with another team, and we talked about, you know, the art of appreciation, right? And that's something I think that educators are also kind of struggling with quite a bit as well, is that, you know, we're constantly trying to show the world that we are so important to society. We're constantly showing society and the world that we are important as early educators. And it can be very stressful. It can be very stressful, and it just feels like it doesn't end. So, you know, I recently did a workshop about building a culture and community around appreciation in the center first, and appreciating one another, so that we can show the world collectively. And I think that goes hand in hand with the burnout and all other aspects, just coming together as a team, configuring that together, and then conquering together as a community.
Yeah. I've always said, you know, your program is only as good as the educators who are delivering it. I mean, that is the most important thing. You can have the most beautiful facility, state-of-the-art program, curriculum, but if the educators are not delivering that curriculum in that beautiful facility, the whole thing falls apart. So I really believe the educators are at the heart of the system. And to make the system work, the educators really have to be, like you said, engaged, empowered, and feel like what they're doing is important, valued.
That's it, just to feel valued. And as I mentioned, sometimes the work has to start within ourselves, in understanding and really believing in our hearts that we are valuable in the work that we do, as well as us as a community, banding together. I love the fact that you have this podcast, because this is a part of the conversation, right? People can listen to this and, bring this information back to their teams to say, we need to do this kind of together, support each other. So I think it's great.
So, do you actually visit classrooms, or because you said you did a workshop? So do you visit like teams of educators? Is that what you do?
Yes, yeah. So I kind of do both kind of situations. So I get invited to do speaking engagements on larger scales, and conferences, but then I also get invited to come and bring enlightenment to teams. So I get an opportunity to meet with teams. Sometimes I get invited to do a one-off workshop on a specific topic that they're working through. And sometimes I do work with teams on a longer spectrum kind of things for 6 to 12 months, where they have specific goals that they want to work on. And, I come in and I do really interactive workshops with them to help re-engage their team for whatever their goals might be.
So, Anisha, what kind of strategies do you have for your educators in terms of what they can do to improve engagement, get that feeling of being valued, working on themselves? What can you do to help?
Ooh, I have a list, but I'll give you a couple. I would
Okay.
say the first aspect I always talk about on my specific platform and all that great stuff is reconnecting with your why. That's a big part of the equation. We've gone so far beyond, the little things that we do each day. We get into a routine of, punch in, punch out. This time's lunchtime, this time's nap time, this time is this, and we get into that routine, and we really, really forget what our why is. And our why is usually rooted into, what brought us to the field. One was that one specific moment in our career where we said, early education feels like the right shoe for me kind of situation. And I find that when I start to have those conversations, and I encourage educators to have that self-reflection piece, that spark comes back a little bit, because they're reconnecting with their day-to-day and they're starting to look at the outlook of their everyday a little bit differently. Another question I think to answer the first part of your question is just that reflection, right? So coming back into your why, thinking about, the legacy that you're bringing in as an early educator. You are leaving a legacy every single day working with these children and with these families. And thinking about that impact that you make is really going to really reconnect with their, spark. I always challenge leaders in leadership roles to have those conversations with their educators to get the self-reflection part going, because a lot of us have just really lost our spark. I would say that aspect.
Love that word.
Yeah,
I love that word
legacy.
spark. I mean,
Yes,
that's just exactly right, I believe.
yes,
There is a spark that you need to be an educator,
yes,
to be, on 100% of the time in front of children. It is difficult, and you need that, that motivation, that inner motivation and that spark within you to keep going and to keep, doing your best. Because
yeah.
the best, yeah, I mean, it's hard.
Yes. And I think also leaning in and reflecting that there are times where you're going to feel like you lost your spark, right? And I think, again, I was mentioning that, at one point in time in ECE, we didn't talk about those things. We didn't talk about losing your spark. We didn't talk about burnout. But, remembering that we're human at the end of the day and those things happen, recognizing that sometimes you do lose it. But what's important is how you get it back, right? And that's the conversation around what is your why, what impact you want to make on the children, and that will reframe, those conversations. I think another aspect is really pulling things in as a team. Because usually it's not just one educator that's feeling, a loss of spark. There's a couple of them on a team, right, that are feeling the same way, but it might show up a little bit differently, right? So pulling people together as a team and having those conversations and just supporting one another is also really, really important. Work-life balance, that's become kind of a cliche kind of word. I know with my team, we're starting to stop using the verbiage work-life balance, because I think sometimes when we think of work-life balance, we think of a 50-50 approach. And really, let's be real, work and life can never be 50-50. And I think that's where we struggle and feel like we're on that hamster wheel. But figuring out a place of workplace harmony where our personal life and our professional life can coexist together. Sometimes our professional will take precedence. Sometimes our personal might take precedence because there's stuff going on at home. And again, we're moving out of the aspect of ignoring what's at home because we have to feel fulfilled in both worlds. And that's where you tap in to creating a great team dynamic, especially in the classroom, right? So if you've got your dynamic duo in the classroom, you're noticing your co-partner is not operating at their 100% at that moment. That's your time to say, you know what, lean on me for a little bit. I'll handle a couple of things, and vice versa. So really, really empowering yourself as a team dynamic as well. But those are just a couple of things I would say to really be able to begin to reconnect with that spark for sure.
I love all of those suggestions. I'm going to encourage all of my staff to listen to this episode so that they can get some good insights. But no, I really do feel that, like you said, in order to reconnect with that spark, that special thing about you that makes you do this and get up every morning and face the children and face the classroom and all that entails, is your why. Like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? And, educators have a special why, I believe. They really have a love for children. And that kind of needs to sustain them through the easy times and through the difficult times, right? And I do agree with you as well. The team dynamic is important. Working with a solid team that is supporting each other helps each and every individual do their best, right? So I love those suggestions. Those are awesome. You have any other tips for the classroom for educators in terms of, how can they feel, let's say they're having a bad moment. How can they bounce back within the day?
So I think really how you can navigate that is creating a team dynamic, especially with leaders, my supervisors, and, those that are in that direct line of leadership, creating a space where an educator can say, you know what, things are really rough for me right now. Can I take an earlier break? I know sometimes the program can be really chaotic sometimes. So sometimes that may be a yes, sometimes that may be a no. But just creating a space where an educator can approach you and say, you know what, I am not myself right now. I'm working on it. But can I have a minute or two to come back? Because a lot of educators don't feel like they have that space. And that's where you're seeing a lot of the burnout actually occur in the classroom, where you're seeing your teachers are just a little bit shorter fused. They're feeling like they want to wrap up activities a little bit quicker. So I think creating an aspect where leaders can open up a space to allow that. And actually the educator themselves doing the work to feel better, right? So if you have vacation time, take your vacation time, take your time off, take your lunch. Do not use your lunch to do so. You know what I mean? So those smaller things that you can do can make a bigger impact.
Yeah. And when you were speaking, something just came into my head. I was thinking about, even parents. How can parents support educators? Because, we see parents twice a day at least, pick up and drop off. And so how can parents be that supportive person for the educator as well, And I think there's something there too.
Yeah, there is. And I think it all goes back into just remembering that we're all human at the end of the day. I know as much as early childhood educators are superheroes, I say that every day. We are superheroes. We do the things, we do the great things. But also for parents to realize that we're human at the end of the day, right? We're here to serve you. We're here to serve the children and see them, but we're also human as well. And sometimes we need a little bit of grace. We just need a little bit of kindness and a little bit of grace for certain situations and stuff like that as well.
And yeah. Absolutely. And I would say working as a team, right? Working as a
Yeah.
team with the parents. And then
Yes.
realizing that this is a team effort and it's not,
Yes.
drop off and here, deal with my child and then I'll
Yes.
pick up and then my responsibility. It's kind of like we're working together all day long.
Yes.
Whatever happens throughout the day, we're in touch all the time. We're, communicating and also they're communicating with us as well. So it goes both ways, I think.
Absolutely.
Encouraging
100%.
that and being open, creating that opportunity where parents feel that opportunity that they can feel like a member of the team, a member of the classroom as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful put. Beautiful put.
So, any parting words for educators? And then afterwards, I'm going to let you share a little bit more about where people can connect with you too.
I think our parting word is just going back to configuring and really connecting with those small joys of our role. Those small moments. If you're in the toddler classroom, you've been potty training a little one for X amount of weeks and it felt hopeless. Then that one day they use the potty and you're like, yay! Those small moments in your days, start looking at that. Because I think as educators, we look at the macro look of all the long list of things that we do. We're forgetting those little moments that really make that impact for the child, but also for ourselves. For ourselves as well. So I would say those are my parting words. Reconnect with your why, and let's go back into looking into those simple joys to make what we do so much more enjoyable.
I have to laugh about the potty training example because the other day I was in the classroom, I was in a toddler classroom, and the teacher was more excited than the child about the child peeing on the toilet. And I was just like laughing watching because the teacher was just so excited because you're right, like you go through a lot of effort. And then when something goes right, you want to celebrate those moments, right? With the child. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel that's so connected because I've taught in every classroom, but toddler, I have to say, was my favorite. And because that's that role where they're moving from infant to preschool, right? That very moment. So a lot of those developmental skills are really popping in. Well, in any age group, developmental skills are growing, but in that toddler, it's that transition phase between I'm not a baby anymore to I'm a preschooler, right? So there's a lot of things happening. But yes, like that moment, I'm always 10 times happier than the child. They're looking at me like, okay, calm down.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing all of your insights today. Tell everyone today how they can reach out with you. If you want to just tell us, the best way to reach out, whether it's, one of your social media channels. And I'll also pop it up on the screen and in the comments.
Oh, awesome. Well, I am a social media girl. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at anishaangella.co. I'm very active on there, so pop into the DMs. You'll get me right there. And then also via email, info@anishathecc.com if you have any questions. And then also our website, which is www.anishathecc.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anisha. Have a
Thank
wonderful day.
you. You too. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I'm back to talk about educator engagement and maybe give you some tips and strategies on how you can become more empowered and engaged and deal with those feelings of dysregulation or stress or possibly give you some coping mechanisms to deal with all of that. So I've done a lot of work on myself over the years. As an educator, as a daycare owner, it can be very stressful. And so I've had to work on myself and my own stress levels. And I found some really good strategies out there that have helped me, and I want to pass them along to you from educator to educator. So there's an acronym that I really like, and it really helps me to ground myself and to really experience joy. And it's called FACE, FACE. So the F stands for focus. Focus on what's in your control. I know that as a type A personality, I like to control things. And so I really feel like this helped to change everything for me because instead of focusing on things that I can't control, I turn my focus to things that are within my control. And that really helps me a lot to cope and to deal with things. So F for focus. A is for acknowledge. Acknowledge your thoughts and your feelings. But don't judge your thoughts and feelings. Just acknowledge them. Know that they're there and they're valid. They're yours, so they're valid. And so be your own best friend. I always think, what would my best friend say to me in this moment? And that should be your own inner dialogue. That should be what you say to yourself. The C stands for come back to your body. So I feel like a lot of times when we get dysregulated, we're not focusing on our body, on our physical presence. And sometimes all you need to do is feel the ground under your feet, feel your hands on the table, do some deep breathing, listen to yourself breathing. And sometimes even just that is enough to get you back to regulation. So focus on your body, come back to your body. Your body's important in your total regulation. And finally, the E. E stands for engage, which is really the whole topic of today's episode, engagement. In order to engage with children, we first need to understand how to engage and how to be mindful within ourselves. And so engagement is really just about being present. It's about really and truly being there. It's about being and not doing. Be compassionate with yourself. Really understand yourself and show yourself a lot of compassion and a lot of love. If there's particular stress management techniques that you like to do, whether it's going for a walk in nature or taking a deep breath or just sitting down, reading a book, listening to music, whatever it is that helps you to deal with stress. And everybody is different. Not everybody needs to go to yoga classes or do meditation. A lot of times people just relax by maybe even watching mindless television or Netflix shows. Whatever it is that gets you into that relaxation mode and de-stresses, do the thing that works for you. So if you can work on focusing on things that are within your control, acknowledging your feelings, being your own best friend, coming back to your body often, and really engaging, really being present. Those are some strategies that I have used and that have worked for me, and I hope that they can also work for you. Educators are the lifeblood of the childcare education system. And so you need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. Thanks for tuning in to the ECE Classroom with Susie Beghin. For more information, you can visit our website at www.susiebeghin.com. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast so you can stay up to date on the latest episodes. Thanks for listening.